while. Let's take a deep breath in. So awesome that you guys are all here. Let's start with this discussion. And maybe Maria, let's start with you and also look at the results here. You were just saying in the morning that at Revolut, everything starts with design. So how far should designers go? Should they always have the first say in starting a new idea, a new product, or when comes the user and the user research?
Sorry, can you repeat it?
How far should designers go? Should they really push boundaries and go with innovative ideas, or should they start with user research and data, and or not? So what's your take on it? And we see the audience is for the other side.
Okay, interesting. So I think it's a mix of everything. Like you cannot lie into one side or the other, like, oh, only start with user research or only start with like ideas. I think even when you're coming up with ideas, following what they would say like your intuition as a designer, like your intuition is based out of experience, based out of observation, based out of trying something and failing again and failing one more time, and then finally getting it right and understanding to build these connections in your brain that let you understand what's gonna work, what's not gonna work. Like a chef probably doesn't need user testing to know that mixing fish and chocolate will probably not be a good idea. And as designers, that intuition, it's experience. It's experience we bring to the table. So I think it's fine to start with ideas, start with what we know. You validate across the way, and it's always good to have, like I mentioned in my presentation, that guidance. It's kind of like users keep steering you a little bit on that right direction. But a lot of it also is observation. Like we talk a lot about intuition versus user testing or user research, and observation for me is like so important. And it's not observing like the competition or anything, it's observing like how people use products. And that usage evolves all the time. So to give you an example, like Instagram stories, right? I was giving this example yesterday. A lot of companies started using this format to communicate because people are already, like they already know how to use Instagram stories. It's more visual, people are engaged. But have anyone paid attention on how people use those Instagram stories 2023? They're full of ads. People have learned how to use them. People are also learning how to skip them really, really fast and be like, nope, nope, nope. So you probably don't want to communicate your terms and conditions and the value prop of your product in that way, right? So it's just like paying attention of the trends. How are people using the products? What are those gestures and like swipes, movements that become very popular through native iOS or Android like devices? Like just seeing that day to day and incorporating all that plus data plus a lot of other points and just have fun.
Yeah, that's a good take. So meaning actually designers are also researchers because they just observe every day what users do. Does it make user research obsolete? What do you think, maybe, Elif?
No, it does not make user research obsolete. Absolutely not. Nothing can make user research obsolete.
Why is that?
I'm not just saying that because I like you and you're sitting next to me and you're a researcher.
Thank you for the answer.
Why is that? Wow, that's a good question, because that was a gut answer. Why research could never be obsolete? How could research be obsolete? We always need to be paying attention and observing, right? That's critical. Without that, what are we doing? How do you know what problem you're trying to solve?
That's a good one. You said before you have to be in love with the problem. You have to be in love with the problem.
I come to design from 10 years in academia, so I'm also a bit biased. But I think, like, truly, if you're not, even if you don't wear a researcher hat and you don't have the word research in your title, if you're not thinking at all or trying to observe anything in the real world or related to the product that you're designing or whatever it is that you're working on, I wish you all the best of luck.
Was there ever, maybe Cameron, you can answer that, was there ever in your past experiences a project, an idea that you just started off without talking to users, without observing, without having no, gut feeling if users would like it or not?
Yeah, I think some of my best work has happened by accident.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I think one of the skills which I've seen designers lose a lot lately over my career is the power of decision making. And they seem to outsource it to some random usertesting.com participants. And the majority of the chances, they're professional testers, right? So like, actually as a designer, your primary skill set which you need to think about is how do I absorb all of this information and then how do I make a decision? And one of the things which we struggled with is designers aren't willing to stand up and be counted for making a decision as an expert. So I think that's really one of the skill sets which we need to keep training. And then I think on the whole, like, everything becoming average and boring and stale, like, it's a real problem which we've got to kind of overcome. And like, best practices aren't enough. And we've got this phrase at Wise, which is like, be pulled back, not pushed forward. And I think for me, it's particularly my design team, like, do the best practice, get it out of the way, and then do the thing which is going to make you proud. Because if you're not proud of your work, like, a customer's not going to care about it. And I think that's the fundamental thing which we need to think about more as an industry.
Yeah, definitely. There's an interesting thought because I think a lot of times we maybe understand user research as validating, right? Validating our ideas. This is why you said most of my best ideas came from my gut. Maybe Mauri, we often talk about gut feeling and agnostic, being agnostic in design. How do we do that? How can we integrate this side and, you know, data, user research, tracking, all of that?
We take risk, and we are not afraid of taking risk. Look, there is one aspect of all this story which is peculiar, in my opinion, on the financial industry. You can test whatever you want on a piece of paper, but when it's about fake money, I would behave in a certain way. When it's about my own money, I would probably behave differently. So our industry has also a certain level of complexity that when you test something on a test account or something, or on a piece of paper, you say, well, this I could pay for it. When it's about putting in the credit card number in and really buy the service and whatever, I'm not quite sure everyone will do it. So there is a certain complexity because we are dealing with money often. Not all the features we build are dealing with money, but often. So I would rather be on the totally agree point. Sometimes I'm getting a bit annoyed. I see things happen that then designers tend to say, well, I ask, why we go this way? Because customer told us to go this way. And I say, well, it's your job to decide which way. It's the job of a customer to tell us if you have done a good or bad job, but they don't tell you which way to go. They tell you, my view, they will tell you if it's a good or bad idea, but they don't tell you where to go. It would be too easy to ask customer what to build and where to go. Therefore, I think there is a beauty of our profession that we have to take some risk, and if we are right, we should celebrate that we are right. How great is that? I mean, the process of celebrating that we had the right intuition and it works, and you have kind of customer really feedback back in a positive way. It's a super emotional situation, and I like it. So I'm definitely for the. I totally agree.
Yeah. But what do you do if you have this innovative idea and people like it, user satisfaction is high, but maybe some user groups don't like it? You know, you can't be inclusive for all types of users. What's the stake on that? Maybe, I don't know, Cameron.
I can take that. I think at the end of the day, people hate change, right? So the most important thing to understand, particularly when you're doing something risky, is that you're not going to please everybody. And I think what you need to develop, particularly among a core team working on something like a big redesign or like a big rebrand or something like that, is you need to develop this deep sense of conviction of what we think the right thing to do is. And that bet is informed by strategic objectives as a company, our intuition over years as a designer. And we basically need to just say, like, we're going to go for it. And there's going to be people who say no. There's going to be people in your company which say no. There's going to be customers which dislike it. And I think that's fine. But what you really need to look at is, do enough people love this, right? And if you're taking work and it's really putting yourself out there, I think you should really see that type of reaction. And I think today, so much design work, people put it out there and they're like, oh, I got like a 2% increase in adoption on that conversion funnel. Like, don't fucking celebrate that. Like, it's an absolute waste of life. Like, let's opt for 20%, 100%. Let's really, really try and push ourselves out of our comfort zone, because I think that's where the magic's going to happen.
How does it relate to pushing out of the comfort zone, new innovative ideas, to trying to have a coherent design language, a design system, something that is, you know, consistent during the time and maybe not crazy innovative? Does this go together, or is it like two opposite poles? Maybe Maria, you want to elaborate on that?
I think it does go together, for sure. Like, you have to have certain things to follow, right? Like, you need to have, these systems are built for us to create consistency, to be able to, we don't want a product that just like feels like a different app in every screen. You want to create that consistency. You want your customers to get used to a certain way of doing things and expect. That's what makes it easy to navigate, easy, like friendlier to use. But at the same time, like those rules there needs to be the space to break those rules and just go crazy. Like with the latest redesign we did, like we broke a lot of things and it was great. What you need to make sure is that you're breaking things with a purpose. When you're creating new components or you're thinking of new patterns, like you have to think of it holistically. So, okay, this is really cool. This works really well for this screen. How could it be used in the rest of the app? How could it be replicated? Will it really be that useful, or is this just like a cool little design thing that I came up with? Like, so it's just thinking holistically about the app, and it's fine to break it as long as things make sense and will move the product forward at the end of the day.
That's easy saying, but how do you know when to break the rules? Like, how do you know, when do you have the gut feeling of saying, that's a nice idea, that's innovative, now we can push the boundaries, now we can risk it? Maybe Mauro, I don't know if you have an answer to that.
We also here, I think, and this is not for the financial industry in general, but of people who design apps. We are sometimes, especially some engineers, we are too stick with platform patterns. Oh, iOS says that the button must be there, it must be there, right? I think Apple is changing their opinion about where the button should be located also regularly. And if you look at the Apple native apps, the one they build themselves, they are not as consistent as everyone realizes. If you open some of those apps, you figure out that some of them are from a couple of years ago, some of them are the new trend. So we should not be too much stick. I agree with Maria. She said we need to challenge, we need to push the boundary. I always thought, since years, I thought that the save button on the upper right corner on the iOS standard is a bad idea. And I think the button would be nicer on the bottom of the screen. Still, I've been told millions of times that if Apple decided it's up there, it must be a good idea, right? Guess what? Apple is changing this right now. It's going towards the Android stuff. So we need to find a balance between we need to be critical. Let me put it that way. We should be critical. The great thing of a designer is that is critical and is finding the right balance between what is a standard, maybe pushing a bit left and right, and then looking how a customer behave on that. So it's a fine exercise, but we should not take anything for granted. If Apple would be right on the design standard, all the apps will look the same, and how boring that would be. How boring that would be.
2 points, yeah. But when do you know that an idea is so innovative that you would risk having no user research or no data? You know what I mean? Like, when do you get this gut feeling?
That implies that you can measure everything, though, but you can't.
Yeah.
Like, so much of design work is completely immeasurable, and I see people trying to like measure the value of some of what we do, and there's no good way to do it. And there's some good things like NPS, and you can do qual testing and stuff, but there's no like pure quantitative measure which says like A is better than B. And that's, I think, what makes things like fashion such a beautiful thing, because it's subjective by nature, and whether we like it or not, our job is subjective. So I think as a company, you have to decide what your direction is and then be confident to go in it. And that's just going to mean there's going to be some things which don't land, and you learn from them.
And how do you get business into that? Like we have now user feedback, data, user research, and we have designers' vision, goals, experience, and then we have the business, right?
Yeah.
For deciding or for giving you the money to do stuff. How's that in that regard?
Yeah, I guess like on a more practical level, you kind of need to know, what am I using this for, right? Am I doing research just to basically sell an idea? And then you should basically say to yourself, like, is there a better way to do this? Am I just not telling a compelling enough story of the value of design overall? Have I not built trust in the expertise of the people which we've hired to deliver on this vision? So I think actually some people assume that the only way to operate in these types of business environments, Wise was a very non-design-led org, 2.5 years ago, and we're shifting quite significantly, is to basically build trust just through use cases. And it doesn't always have to be like pure data which does it. We've taken a number of big leaps in our product, which people were nervous about, but they 10x'd what people would expect and outperformed our wildest expectations. And with every single one of those, we just kind of scaled it up, and their confidence is growing more and more in this way of doing stuff. So I think it's like start small and then kind of just scale up, but don't resort to a battle, which I think is really difficult to win, because if you can't measure the value of your job and you're in somebody who's like in analytics who can, you're going to lose. So you need to find different ways to talk about it.
I think there's also something that's bubbling up under these answers, which is confidence, and not confidence like in a sort of data sense, but confidence in the gut, right? That's what we're talking about. When we say gut, it's like, this feels like it's going to be good. This feels like it's going to be right. So let's try it. The story you shared, Maria, with us about the designer the day before Christmas, not on Christmas, that sounded like someone with confidence, right? They tried something and they're super excited to share it. And I think that those are the moments where it's like, go for it.
That's a good point, because confidence doesn't come overnight, right? It
I
establishes
don't
maybe-
know.
Or doesn't.
I was thinking, so, yeah, I don't know who said that, but I remember I was reading somewhere the notion of educated guts. So the fact that you can use your guts. The job is not, the challenge is to educate your guts and then take a decision based on feelings, right? But you need to educate it, right? Rather than just have no idea, I think is blue is better than red and stuff like this. So I think that's the exercise we can do very much. We're working on this every day. So we should trust our guts if we believe our guts are educated.
Yeah.
And if you're in a group of people, it's even better.
And I think it could be that your gut feeling came from a user observation that you had, or maybe not. So I think that's just a piece of the puzzle, right? But still, it's pretty, so we have those two sides, which are maybe not two sides, really. Maybe we have to integrate them more. Does one of you have a good, I don't know, experience of how to integrate them best? Like, what's your take on this? How can you balance those two things in your work? The research, the data on the one hand, and go for the ideas on the other hand.
Is it about balancing or is it about blending?
Good back question. What do you think?
I don't know. What do you think? I think it's about blending.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's about blending because that's the educated gut, is it's blended in there.
Yeah, maybe because I think the problem we often have is having those two poles, it's always like fighting against each other, right? And it's like, no, but the data says this. No, but we think that. So maybe this should not even be the case that we have this fighting opposite sides.
I'm also very much attracted by products that are stuck with few ideas, even if they don't work at all, but they keep going. I really like that, right? They have few principles and they don't give a fuck and they continue to go this way. With the risk that it makes absolutely no sense, but I like that thing.
Yeah.
If we would miss that, it would really be really boring. So I like that part of the game. So I would not feel very comfortable being in a company that is totally data driven. There needs to be some personality in there somehow. Something to say, okay, we do it this way. No one likes it, doesn't matter. This is what we are. We are all imperfect, right? And I think how boring is a person that is perfect? So we are all imperfect. So even our product needs to have a bit imperfection in there. There was a famous filmmaker that's very good in cutting his movies. And at the end of the process, after months of cutting and mounting his movie together, he said, now it's perfect. And then he went to the film, he cut the frame out, or a couple of frame outs, and he threw them away. And now it's really perfect, because it's imperfect. And I think I like this idea of a bit of imperfection must be in there. That's my personal view. I found it human.
Being a researcher by myself, I think research often tells you what the perfect solution should be like, right? Or what is not perfect in a product, in a design. So I think this is for sure something where maybe could blend the approaches much, much better. Do you remember some ideas or something where you said, maybe here I was too biased, I was too risky? Did that ever happen to you guys?
Yeah, a lot.
What did you do?
A lot. So I think you have to protect against your own hubris, like when you're doing this type of stuff. You're making bets, and I can think of countless examples where we were incredibly confident as a team that it was the right thing to do, and then we did it, and then after 6-8 months, we were like, no, turns out we were wrong. I think a lot of the times that comes with launching new features. So we've worked on a couple of things for our business proposition, which we thought would really, really catch. And when we kind of analysed it, it was just quite easy to see, like, yeah, it was the right bet, but whether we were the right company to take that bet was probably wrong. So I think that's when we, the temptation when you're in that scenario is like, well, we should just keep making more stuff. The more fixes everything. And actually, it's the opposite. That sometimes you need to reduce stuff back. And by cutting a bunch of features we've done recently, we've actually seen a really positive improvement from our customers, because things which are in the app we're very proud of. They're they've got quite high feature fidelity. So I think that's kind of the scenario which we work under. And I can't think of, I can think of countless examples. But I think for me, it's like, I'm very comfortable being proved wrong, but I'm not comfortable with anyone on our team not having an opinion. And I think that's the big difference. So I think we try and encourage people to make stuff they love and also have an opinion.
Does it also mean pushing boundaries can also mean that you have a product out which is not awesome? You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're never going to be 100% successful. I think there's always going to be some successes in leaps. I think, at least in fintech and product design, it's more recently, it's been rare that I've seen like a big leap get taken and it hasn't worked out for the better. Because I think that's because, largely influenced by Facebook and Amazon, we just got obsessed with this like multivariant testing model that we're just going to throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. And it's like, you can't really innovate your way just through like hundreds of variations. And if you think about Amazon, like actually their true innovation is in the logistics side. It's not actually in the design. So in finance, like if we want to innovate in design, we need to actually think about what that is. And you can't just like A/B test your way to excellence.
That's maybe a good point, because I wanted to ask you, how risky can we be in finance? Because now this is maybe a general discussion so far, right, for design in general, but how risky can we be? How much boundaries can we push in design in this area where we're sitting today? This is maybe a question also for Mauri again.
I mean, the team knows my opinion about this. I always make this example with machine learning, right? So many people, investors come to us or analysts come to us and tell me, how much are you doing with machine learning? I say, well, we're doing lots of machine learning, but customer facing, what are your recommendations to customers? Say, look, machine learning is built around the idea you need to do lots of mistakes. It's an evolutionary system. So you need to do lots of mistakes and you get better and you get better and you get better. And then I'm telling them, okay, guess how many wrong advice can I give to my customer before they show me a finger and they go to another bank? How much evolutionary can I be? So yes, I need to be very precise. However, perfect is killing the industry. Perfect in the past has killed the industry. The reason why many banks deploy things in production once a year was mainly because they wanted to make it perfect. Guess what? They were never perfect. Same thing with PSD2. It took us what? It took us maybe 6 years to come up with PSD2 APIs, right? And guess what? There was a lots of crappy things in there afterwards. So perfection is killing. It kills any industry. But maybe a positive side on this is, I don't know how many of you read this interview to Brian Chesky, the CEO of Airbnb, saying, customer gives you permission to try things in a certain domain. So we need to understand what is our area where we can experiment, where customer give us our customer giving us permission to experiment. And that's the area where we can do something. The problems start when we try to do something which is a bit outside. They don't give us permission to deal with other stuff. But very often, I'm speaking for a large bank now, we are big, we are rich, we have lots of money, we have lots of people, and we are successful, so we think we can do everything. And this is the biggest mistake. Maria said it right in her speech. She said the fact that we have lots of engineers doesn't mean we need to build everything all the time, right? She's totally right. So let's try to understand what is the area of permission our customer gave us. And within that, we can iterate endlessly, in my opinion, because that's what is expected. When you go out, it's a bit more tricky. And by the way, I think this conference would be a perfect location for Brian to join. I even wrote him 2 emails. I never got an answer. So if any one of you knows him, say we are waiting for next year. It will be a stage here, and all of us will be happy to get. It would be a perfect person. He's a designer running one of the biggest companies in the world. He's design thinking. It would be perfect. I was unlucky with my email. Maybe you guys are more lucky than myself. Give
This
it
is a
try.
shout out officially.
Well, he is listing his apartment in San Francisco, so you can find his email in Airbnb. So send him email, maybe he will answer.
I think he could hear us. Any other takes on the specific area of finances?
I think it's such a challenge when you're dealing with people's money. Like this is, you need to take it seriously. It's a big responsibility. Someone not being able to find how to withdraw their money, or like it makes an impact in their lives or a difference. So you have to be very careful with those basics. Make sure those basics are clean. They're extremely intuitive for people to understand, and then find other rooms around it where you can experiment a little bit more or take a little bit of a risk. To give you an example, we started doing a little bit of customization here and there at Revolut with like letting you change the color of something, and like we honestly thought that was one of the ones that we were like, we can do it, let's do it. And we were genuinely surprised of how much people were enjoying just making these financial products really reflect their style with something very simple as like the button. And so for Revolut 10, we're like, well, let's give a very how do you call it, like a default setup that everyone could love. Not everyone's gonna want to like customize their app and make it their own and go change every image of every account they have. Of course not. So let's give them a very clean experience. Like let's make sure all the functionality that's key for their banking experience is there. It's front and center and it's clear. And then let's play a little bit and let's let people that are, like, we have a very young audience too at Revolut that like love this customization and they're changing their photos and they're uploading photos. Like let's play a little bit there and open it up for creativity in other areas that are not basically hurting anybody.
Is it hard to find those areas to know, okay, this is the play area and this is the not negotiable area where we...
I think it's very clear. I mean, there's also lots of regulation. That, if your compliance and legal team are good, you'll see the line very fast and very clearly. I think what sometimes is hard is getting the buy-in for those things, because it's not just like let's do fun background. Like it's a whole like the tech behind it is like a lot of logic, a lot of back-end work that had to be built just to let people change the background of their account. So like, how do you convince a company like this is a delight? Like, it's like maybe like, who knows, maybe people do download this app because they can't change the background and make it really cool. But like, how do you measure it, right? Like what you were saying, like it's so hard to measure the success of pure design, of like a delightful design when you're trying to do it. So getting the buy-in to do these special things sometimes is quite hard. I think the company needs to, like, as I said, like I'm very fortunate that from the top up, like this is something that is very much valued at Revolut. But I can understand how for some people it can be very tough to get buy-in for, and time and money to make these things happen.
We always need time and money.
Yeah, exactly.
There's ways to do it in like top-down design orgs as well, which I think is a common question people like obviously ask me, coming from when Wise was a very technical heavy org. It was like, why even bother? So again, like I said earlier, pick something where you have a lot of control over it, where you don't have a massive amount of stakeholders, and win at scale, right? So start small, and then you evangelize that, and then you pick something bigger, and then you pick something bigger. And before you realize it, you can change a company and the way they think about stuff just by taking kind of small steps towards it. So your leaps, scale up, basically. So I think that's one of the tactics which I've advised to, a lot of designers who might not have this, like maybe to start with like a little unique interaction. And I guarantee you, when your CEO's going around, and if you remove it, they'll be like, oh, where was that? I love that. So I think there's ways to do that. And I think there's that. And then the other thing which I think Netflix does quite well, and they have these things called Everest tests, which are basically like saying we're just going to ignore regular convention and we're just going to try and do something wacky and wonderful and see what happens. And that's quite easy to get buy-in, because you can say like, it's just a test. Like, we're crazy, don't worry about it. And then it kind of, people come to it with a different mindset, and then you can do something, and then if that works, people are suddenly like, oh my God, like that changes my thinking. So I think there's lots of practical things you can do as well to do it, because not every org is going to be very like, top-down design. This really values.
True. Maybe this is a good last quote, because we're already running out of time of this lively discussion. Pick your playground, pick your battle, so to say, where you can risk it, be innovative, and blend user research and your awesome ideas together. I think this is something that we could all learn and do more in the future. So thank you so much for this really insightful panel discussion. I think there's more time to discuss later on in the networking and on this conference. Thank you so much again, Mauri, Elif, Cameron, and Maria. Thank you.
Thank you.